I'm glad I hope you got some coffee and some refreshments outside. We are ready to start our first session. So I have the pleasure today of introducing a dear colleague. He is the Director of Research Operations, in a way, close enough. So Dr. Thomas Spencer, I actually was part of the interview when he came to the university, as part of the committee that hired him. And when he interviewed, after he finished, I called the chair of the committee and I said, okay, we need to hire him. If we do not hire him, I will never ever serve in another committee, because it was obvious that he had a vision and a mission, and the right attitude for what we needed. And I can tell you that he did not disappoint. Ever since he came over and took over managing the OSP, the Office of Research sponsored programs, it has been an amazing transformation. We're getting things streamlined, we're getting things answers, questions answered in a timely manner. If we have an issue, we established a monthly meeting with ADRs, Associate Directors of Research, where we talk about issues, and he takes them back to whoever is the issue, basically, and tries to resolve it. And it has been amazing. And I'm not just saying it because he's here. I would have basically said the same thing if he's not there. But Thomas has done amazing things. We are where we are today, and we're heading towards R1 in hopefully 2028 because of the fantastic work that he has done, and also Dr. Jan Sagan, who you'll hear of later on, some of the things that they have done. So it was very important to invite him, because I know some of my colleagues might not be as blessed as I am having the support that I have, but I wanted him to just talk about some of the things that at least UTRGV has done to help centers like mine grow the capacity, increase the capacity, and do it in a manner that is expedited, okay? And making sure that, hey, my voice is heard when I have issues, and it's not just gonna go into some, random loop of never-ending pain, right? So what he's gonna do today, so whether we're gonna do the session, we're gonna give him about 15 to 20 minutes. He's gonna talk about some of the things that they have done, okay? Some of the successful initiatives we have done for, increasing capacity and also supporting the centers. And then we have the moderators, my two colleagues and co-organizers, Pawan Tiagi and Arturo Pacheco Vega. They are going to moderate and have some questions that, we're going to have it interactive. So it's going to be some presentation, but then after that, the rest of the session is digging deep, asking questions. I want you to stifle him. If you stifle him, I'll get you like an extra dinner, okay? With questions, right? He might not have all the answers, but I know, knowing Thomas, he will find a way to get you the answers. But have those conversations and see, hey, this is what we have. We might have the answers, we might not, right? But this is a start. So with that, I want to welcome Dr. Thomas Spencer, and please give him your undivided attention. Thank you.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Test 1, 2. Okay, I will speak loudly and maybe the mic will catch up. There it goes. Okay. So, good morning, everyone. As Konstantin noted, I'm going to share some of the things that worked for UTRGV. And we split this presentation into 2 presentations. Dr. Sagan, who will present later, is going to talk a little bit about the strategy that we worked on to actually get to this point. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the how and the what. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the operations of it. So I'm going to share some of the things that work for us. Like Konstantin said, not everything might apply to everything that you're doing at your institution. but I'm going to do my best to talk about things that work for us, and I'm going to do my best to talk about things that maybe didn't cost a lot of money as well, because I think that that's important as well. When I came to UTRGV, I came from a university that did about $600 million of research a year, and I've worked at a university that did about $2 billion of research a year. So coming to UTRGV, it was a change in scope exponentially. I did not have the staff, I did not have the infrastructure that I was used to at the previous institutions. So a lot of what I did was I brought those best practices that I've used at very large institutions, and I found a way to make them focus and work for UTRGV on our way to Emerging Research University, which is a Texas status, and then Carnegie R1. So having said all of that, I'm going to get into a little bit of it. All right. So you know what? This I don't want to be behind a podium, and somewhat works. So we start off with the concept that the Division of Research are customer service partners for our faculty. We're not here to say no, and we're not here to get in people's way. We're here to try to find a path to yes. And I think what's important is that path to yes might not always be what the faculty initially comes and talks to us about, but we do our absolute best to get them where they need to go for their research mission, for their careers, and in order to support them. So I've broken my presentation down into a couple things, and again, I'm clear that I'm talking about the engine of the research. Dr. Seigen's talking about the strategy, but imagine what we're talking about as an engine. And the engine needs to work effectively so that the fuel that we put into it, our researchers and their research scientists, can get us down the road as far as it can go. If your engine is not tuned, yes, it's still going to work, but you may not go as far as you could with the resources that you have. So keep all of that in mind as we go here. We're going to talk about building relationships. We're going to talk about creating standards, tracking the outcomes of that effort with metrics, so you know where you're going and how well you're doing. Creating new support teams where required. We'll talk about what worked for UTRGV. Building and launching software that supports UTRGV. One of the things that I've learned in my 25 years of research administration is that research administration is not something where you can just buy something off the shelf and meet the expectations for every single university. You're probably going to need to build something that works for you. And we're going to talk a little bit about what works for UTRGV. And then surveys for areas of opportunity. So having said that, I'm going to move pretty swiftly into relationships. Constantine mentioned this, and I think this is one of the most important things, and I'll start and end with the concept of people. People are what matters, and so we've built this network of Associate Deans for Research. And the Associate Deans for Research are from every school on campus, and we work with every single one of them on a monthly basis, and we have kind of a priority. Some of the things that the Associate Deans for Research do is help us get the word out. If your Division of Research or your central administration makes a change, but no one knows about that change, did you actually make the change? The tree falls in the woods and doesn't make a sound. So we work with them to make sure that the information and the changes that we're doing in support of faculty are actually known. And I think that's important. Then we go down to a little bit more of the making the sausage, where we actually use the ADRs as opportunities to talk about policies or procedures that are not ready for the campus yet. And so we talk about things and say, this is what we're planning on doing. Can you help me pick it apart? That's the terminology I use with the ADRs. And I'd rather have the ADRs tell me what I missed or what's going to annoy people at a small group of people who are working towards the betterment of the university than releasing it and having 45 different faculty come to tell me that, oh, you forgot about my X, Y, or Z. So we utilize that for that purposes. And it's proven very useful. We come together on a monthly basis and we talk about things that are ready to talk about to the university, and more importantly, we talk about things that are not ready to talk about to the university and how those changes might affect people. And this is like I said, excellent group of people, and we work through it on a monthly basis. And I think this is also important too. University and research at university is not working in a silo, or hopefully not working in a silo. So we're building bridges to the other areas of the university and making sure that those bridges understand our mission, we understand their mission, and how we're working together. So some of the areas in your school: provost, academic affairs, student affairs, university police. It sounds like something you might not want to talk to for the research, but if you can't get access to a lab on Friday night, well, then you're not going to be able to get any work done. So we had to work very closely with our university police. Facilities, I'm sure everyone has a story about facilities. I won't spend too much time there. Information technology and information security are two very important areas, and again, their goals and mission might not be the same as research. Their goals and mission might be for simplicity and to protect the university, while our goals and missions are to make sure that we're pushing the boundaries of how we can use that information technology, and that doesn't always match. So we make sure that we have that relationship in place. And then human resources. When there is a concern, I can pick up the phone and call someone immediately, get through all of the levels of administration, all the levels of bureaucracy, because I've taken the time to build those relationships before I need them. I build my bridges before I need them, and when Constantine calls me with a problem, I pick up the phone and call someone who can make a change rather than having to start at the bottom and figure out who it is. I think that's saved a lot of time and a lot of headache for dozens, if not hundreds of faculty across the university. And that doesn't cost anything. Invite them to your meetings, invite them to your holiday parties, get to know these people, and build a real relationship with them so that when you need something from them or they need something from you, you can translate the goals and the missions and work across those gaps. So, relationships. Start with the people. And then let's talk about standards. When I arrived at UTRGV 3.5 years ago, work was getting done. I want to be clear. There was research being done, there was research administration being done, but every individual contributor was doing the work differently. There was a different way to process grants, there was a different way to process awards, compliance was different, some people got more compliance than others, some people might have bypassed some of the things. All of it was done individually, and there were no real process standards. And so in my first summer at the university, we sat down and mapped what the acceptable process was for pre-award and post-awarding compliance. And I know that sounds simplistic, but it was a huge step in setting timelines and setting expectations and what I call service level agreements. Because when you submit something to OSP, you submit a pre-award, you submit a post-award, you submit an IACUC, you submit an IRB, if you don't know how long it will take due to prior expectations in the university, then you might have a different expectation than the central administration does. If you think that you can turn around an IRB in 35 minutes, it's probably not going to happen. But you set those expectations early, and you communicate those expectations. Everything from requesting a key to a lab, all the way up to a human subjects protocol. And you set those expectations. And without getting too deep into it, you can see that this is an example of pre-award. And this is what we did. We sat there and we said, okay, step 1 has to happen before step 2. Within step 1, there are these 5 things that must occur. Now, you can see here, and again, I'm sure we might be able to provide the slides so you can get a little deeper dig. But every single thing here has a minimum expected time and a maximum expected time. If everything is great and filled out perfectly, this is going to take 3 days. If we got something that was only half-baked and not really sure what we're going to do with it, it might take anywhere between 30 days and 60 days. And so there are these boundaries that we're setting up. And the boundaries are useful because when something passes a boundary of what I would consider a normal service level expectation, my system or my staff can let me know that we have an outlier. That outlier might be because of a specific question, it might be because we're waiting on someone else for an answer, but it lets me identify outliers on my schedule rather than having someone call me at 5 o'clock on a Friday and tell me that something's broken. So, and forgive the mic, it's going in and out. But this is very useful, and again, this didn't cost anything other than time. Document Planner, this is something that I use and have used for quite a while. We're jumping around the areas of pre and post award here, but when we're talking about an application to an agency, this is something that we do in our team, and I don't know if everyone's doing it, but again, it doesn't really cost much other than time. We have, when someone tells us that they're submitting an application, we know what the sponsor deadline is, and then we have our internal deadline. Everything that we submit to agency, we submit the day before to agency, so that it doesn't come down to 5 p.m. on a Thursday or a Friday where everyone is struggling to get the last thing out. And of course, that's the time when the computer systems fail and you're stuck. And all of that effort, 6 months of effort, is just out the door because you can't get it done. And so in January of this year, I worked everyone up to it, and then we all agreed that we're going to submit everything the day before it's actually due to the agency. We had 600 submissions last year, and about 3% of them were necessitated on the day of. So that's great news, and it really lowered the stress, not only for our investigators, but for the staff, and it prevents burnout for those research administrator staff. And then we have all of this other material on backing up from when you need to submit the budget, from when you need to submit the narrative, from when you need to submit all the documentation. And we are flexible because we understand that the reality of things are flexible, but giving people an idea of where to go has proven very useful in reducing last minute stress. Yes, ma'am.
How did you get everyone on board for that transition to
The minus the day one?
Yeah.
Well, we started with the ADRs. We started having that conversation months before we were actually going to do it. And we had the conversation of, okay, in the last year, 50% of them were done on the day of, and we actually realized that there was a cohort of investigators that were usually the ones that went down to the last minute. And so we had to have a conversation with those investigators and letting them know ahead of time. And then we rolled it out with flexibility initially. All right, this is what we're going to try to do. We're going to try to submit everything the day beforehand. And then after several months of that, we implemented that we will be submitting everything before that. And then we went into an exception process so that if there was a need, you had to justify why you were submitting the day of. And that could be because subawards were not coming in yet, we were missing paperwork, or perhaps there was a heavy teaching load and we wanted to be supportive of someone like that. But the justification came into it. And if someone is continually a frequent flyer, then at that point we loop in the ADR for that college and try to figure out if there's a reason. And so this is something where a lot of R1s are headed. And I think a lot of people are moving in this direction because it comes down to the fact that the way I explained it to especially the detractors was, in the year before we did this, we had 3 failures due to technical issues on the day of. And it was technical issues that sometimes we were in control of, sometimes we weren't in control of. Sometimes it was the university network that just wasn't ready for it. Sometimes it was an agency system that was, because the entire country is submitting on the same day, it couldn't handle it. Sometimes it was just due to time zones. Oh, go ahead.
And again, like it started with, at the beginning, when Thomas brought that idea to the ADRs, everybody said, oh my God, we're going to have mutiny in our hands. But it started with, us sending the message. So I'm a senior associate dean for research. And what I did is I followed it. I basically said, I'm going to submit one day. I'm not going to hack just because I have the power to do it the day of. So we started telling the chairs to tell the faculty, like, look, if you're not ready for the day before, okay, it's going to be an issue. You might not get your proposal. So it was a little bit hard at the beginning, but then now it become a routine, meaning you know that if it's due on December 6th, December 5 needs to be out. And only under extreme conditions, meaning, like let's say you're waiting for a subrecipient or some letter and the other institution is delaying it, it's not us, and we have to wait, Thomas will gladly grant. But not because, hey, I'm still not done with my proposal. So I think like it's hard at the beginning, but it has to be something, not just Thomas, it has to be the ADRs, the deans, the chairs. Otherwise, if it's just one person trying to, it's not going to work. So it has to be a community that's trying to do that. So it was starting beginning, it was a little bit harder, but now it's a routine.
Yep. And in general, that's how we've been rolling out policy changes and process changes. We don't do a hard launch unless we must, like for a software or something like that. If there is something we're planning on doing, we talk about it again, we talk about it a third time. Then we do a soft launch if possible, and then we initiate a hard launch at some time in the future. And those timeframes are different due to different different things. If it's a small thing, we might talk about it and then do it a month later. Something like this, we were talking about it months and months before we actually implemented it. And if Constantine's willing and able to do it, I'd be happy to share our memo and our processes, because I think that's one of the things that we can do is learn from each other. If someone has already invented the wheel, don't reinvent the wheel. So I'd be happy to share through Constantine the memo that we shared with our faculty explaining it. And several times, especially in January and February, I had to pull out that memo and talk to someone and say, hey, this is what we're doing. I realize you're busy and you may not have seen it, but here's how we're moving forward. So.
And by the way, this presentation is available in your Uva app, so you can download it or anytime. It's a PDF.
Excellent. Hard stuff questions. I couldn't find a nicer name or a more friendly name for this, but this is something that I think is often overlooked, especially when you're dealing with a university that may be growing into research. Research is one aspect, and specifically the division of research is an org chart. We're specifically, we have a silo of authority that we can approve, and we have areas that we know are associated with research that we just can't approve. And so we developed about 15 hard stop questions, and this is not all of them, but they're ones that are easily understood. So if there is a research proposal that is going to be submitted, and there is a yes to one of these hard stop questions, they must be addressed before the proposal can be submitted to agency. Some of them are like limited submission. That makes sense. You can only submit one, or there's a limited number that you can submit. And so we want to make sure that we are kind of corralling the idea. One of the things that I think that we had a problem with at UTRGV was the concept of course or degree development. We had a lot of faculty members who would suggest that as part of their research that they were going to be developing a new course or degree, and they were not speaking with the provost about that. They were just assuming that if I got funded for it, that it was going to be approved. And that was problematic because that's not necessarily how the accreditation side works. They don't address it after the fact. And so we had a number of things when I recently arrived, where someone told me, well, 6 years ago we submitted something and got funding, and now I am allowed to create a new degree. And no, that's not the case. So we've moved a lot of those hard questions to the application process, only as much as were necessary, and I think that's important too. There are some things with a research that designed by agency, we don't want you to spend a lot of time because we don't know if you're going to get funded. And so we've created these hard stuff questions. They are, I call them speed bumps rather than hurdles. They're not intended to stop the research or prevent the research, but they are intended to help both educate the investigator that there might be something that they need to go have a conversation outside of the division of research, and or that we'll allow you to submit, but if you are awarded, we're all going to have to get around a table and have a conversation on whether or not we really do want to spin up a new degree or something along those lines. And so these are all handled at submission process, so that we can ensure that the submissions going out the door, once awarded, will not cause disruptions to the overall university at award. New organizational units, again, if you want to spin up something brand new, well, that's great. We're going to help you do that. But just because you were awarded awarded from agency does not mean that you're allowed to create a brand new department within the College of Sciences. So these are the hard stops. For general information for what we're calling soft stops, we just want to inform our faculty about some things that they may not know about. There are guidelines about using the logo for the university. And so we're going to teach you about it. We're not going to stop you working on it, but we're going to use that opportunity as an opportunity to explain things to people. Student data offsite locations. We get a lot of questions about can I use an offsite IDC rate versus an onsite IDC rate. So we're going to use this opportunity to help our faculty learn a little bit more about research. I don't expect or want my researchers to be experts in research administration. I'm going to teach them when they need it, and then I'm going to get out of their way and let them do their research. High performance computing is a great one. Uncommon items is a good one. If you're buying something that might be export controlled, we're going to teach you about that at the moment. But other than that, we're going to get out of your way. So some of the things that we're doing. So operational metrics, and this is something that once you've set up a lot of these processes, once you've set up a lot of these guide rails and guardrails of making sure that you've got the engine tuned, actually keep tabs on it. And I know that seems silly, but actually pay attention to what you're doing. And so we came up with 10 metrics that count for us. These are the metrics that we're measuring in research and division of research. I think John's going to talk a little bit about how we got to these metrics, but I'll tell you a little bit about what they are. Number of proposals submitted is terribly important. You can't win an award if you don't submit the award. And then what we have down here is research expenditures, and that's important because we're looking towards Carnegie and we're looking towards emerging research, and that's how they count that. But then number 5 and number 6, the number of faculty on proposals and awards. As a number of, we have it here as a number, as a unique, distinct number. We also have it as a number of percentages. So we want to encourage our faculty to submit for award. And so we track how many faculty, and our faculty is not growing at a prodigious rate, but you can see since 2020 to 2024, we're almost doubled the number of faculty that attempted an award, and that's great. That means we're lowering the boundaries of people trying to apply for awards. We want you to do it. And we're gonna, and John will talk to you a little bit about the strategy of how we're convincing people to do it. But we want to make sure that when you are ready to submit an award, it's not overly burdensome for you to do so at UTRGV. Number of faculty with project expenditures, total requested amount, and total fund amount. These are all pretty standard metrics. They matter to us, and we keep close tabs on them on a weekly basis, actually. So we monitor our service level agreements, and we monitor our 10 what we call box metrics, because they keep us in the box of where we're headed. And so you can see here that you know, in all of our metrics, we're doing a great job. That's great. And every year we sit down and we say, all right, do we want to keep it flat? What's our growth percentage? Are we comfortable with 10%? Are we shooting for 15%? And so we have those conversations internally. And again, oftentimes this doesn't actually cost anything. If you've got the ability to track the metrics and what you're doing, it's just a matter of investing that time and making sure that you're doing so. Support teams, oh, go ahead.
So this is very interesting. I have a couple of questions. The first
Sure.
question is, your success rate is pretty high, like about 42-43%. Is this normal, or what is the? So you have about 600 proposals submitted, 257 awarded.
Yep.
Is this typical, or are you better than others?
I don't think this is typical at a national average. I also think that we don't submit as many as R1s. I think R1s have a higher number of total submissions and a lower number of total awards. We do our best to work with faculty and make sure that their proposals are ready to go. And so I think we probably have a higher hit rate than most places. And some of that is because we are focusing with our faculty to help them kind of overcome that submission. As we grow into R1, we'll probably have less time based off of the total amount of submissions. But for now, we're doing our very best to provide a level of support that probably supports this hit rate. I'll also say that at UTRGV, because we are a smaller university, there are a number of award types that we can apply for that are less competitive. And I think that's also part of it as well. So we're being very strategic on what we go for, but I also think we're providing a higher level of support than I think most R1s do.
Okay, my second question is, what do you do about the awards that are not awarded, the projects that are not awarded? Do you analyze them, why they are not awarded, or what's the metric for success even for failed projects?
That is a great question. So we have an entire department called Research Enhancement. And Research Enhancement works what is pre-award. So they're the ones who help. Sometimes it's called development at other institutions. They are the ones who help investigators identify funding opportunities that fit them and fit their science. And then they also provide on demand, if you want to sit down and review your scores and talk about it and prepare yourself for a resubmission, they provide that service as well. And they provide a number of things.
So just to give you an example, one of the faculty that got an award, also that submitted, didn't get it, right? And he was like, I wrote a very good proposal, what happened? So I had him meet with Abby Guillory, who's a part of the team. And they sat with him and they said, well, okay, well, there's the issue here. You're talking about a certain expertise, but you don't have it in your proposal. So people are gonna see it. You're proposing something that you hope you will get, but you can actually include a COPI in that area that will. So they sat down with him and gave him, okay, well, that's what you need to do. This is what you were missing. They got him a support letter that was also not there. So they will help you. Some of it was also, the idea was good, but it wasn't, the first page looked kind of more very technical and not broad enough for somebody to understand what you're trying to do. So they helped them rewrite that page. And I think the second time they got it. So there is that help that is available for faculty if they want to take that help. I actually did it in one of the proposals where we had a team and people wanted to be COPIs and everybody wants to be a COPI. And so I sat down, I gave it to Abby and I said, can you give it to an external evaluation team and say, look at these resumes and tell us, what is the best chance of us getting that grant based on the list of co-PIs? And then they identified, they said, well, strategically, you might want to put this person, this person, this person. That helped me, because when I go back to the faculty and say, look, reviewers already saw this, and they said these resumes will be better aligned to be co-PIs. It's not about egos, it's about this is what's best for the grant, and that's what I'm gonna go with, versus I just wanna be co-PI because I was here first. So they raise the team, and usually coming from a third party, the faculty will take it better than me dictating, no, you're a co-PI, you're not. So that is something that we've added, and it has helped a lot.
And we encourage that introspection. Oftentimes, if an agency offers it, take it. Like, and send someone who takes excellent notes and have them take those notes, because oftentimes, sometimes the agency won't actually give you the raw reviewer, but they'll talk you through it. And so we've done it many times where we have the PI and 2 research administrators on the call. And all my job to do is ask pointed questions and then take copious notes, then give it back to the investigator for them to be able to aim for a resubmission.
My last question
Sure.
about metrics. So my understanding is that UTRGV is R2 now, and you
We are.
want to go to R1.
Mm-hmm.
You said you're on a path.
Yep.
So how do you, and your office is extremely important in that path.
Mhm.
So how do you measure the success of your office to the contribution or contributing to R1 pathway?
I like the way you're asking me a question that I'm going to address in a bit. I like it. No, that's important. That's important. So I will. We at every instance of a submission, or every instance of a work packet, be it a compliance issue or anything, we send a survey to our faculty and ask them, how did we do? And we get feedback on every single work. We ask for feedback. We don't get feedback. We ask for feedback on every single work packet that we do. And I will note that Carnegie is changing their methodology of what an R1 is, and so technically we are R1 for research. It's a trailing metric, and so for research, not for degrees, we now meet that expectation. So we are working towards R1, and from a research expenditure standpoint, we're there. We just have some other metrics that need to catch up at the institution. So.
And we're gonna have time for questions. I just want Dr. Spencer to finish, because
Okay,
then we're gonna
okay.
have the moderators ask some pointed
Sorry.
questions.
I will move swiftly. I like the conversation though, I really do.
We will have them, don't worry.
Okay, all right. So support teams. This, I think maybe my mic turned on. That's one too. I don't know. All right, I'm gonna try to talk loudly. Okay, so for our institution, we identified some areas that did not exist. There were teams that did not exist. And for us, one of those was contracts and industry agreements. So we were able to do sponsored programs, but all of the support, like material transfer agreements, memorandums of understanding, all of those were being bounced around. Is it procurement that handles that? Is it research that handles that? Is it contracts? Is it legal that handles that? So we created this new area. This is their first year of existence, and so we're helping them spin this up. But this is a brand new team that meets an expectation that we knew was a gap but didn't exist at UTRGV. And so we created this new group called Contracts and Industry Agreements. And in order to help our faculty, we created a direction of service memo. So if you want to do this, start here. If you want to do this, go here. If it's a clinical trial, go talk to this other group of people. And we shared that to help them understand, with this new group, there's a new front door. And so we want to make sure you know when you go to this group versus another group. And we're using that technology. And we're helping through that area as well. I'm going to go quickly through this. College level research coordinators. We had spent the last 2 years really working on the central core, the central administration core, but we realized not every college was treated the same. They didn't have the administrative support, especially for research. And so in collaboration with the deans, we worked to create a college level research coordinator. This is a jointly funded group of people, and every college has a pre or post award person that supports research administration, and they are very closely tied to the investigators. They understand, if it's a College of Sciences, they understand what the College of Sciences faculty are doing. If it's a College of Liberal Arts, they have an entirely different mindset and they're working with the faculty in a different way.
but we created this brand new level of more connected support for our university, and it's proven very useful for the colleges that submitted a lot already. It makes sure that the things that are coming to the central office are put together well. For the colleges that did not submit very much, or were not aware of how they could bring research into their areas, this level of person actually performs more of a development mindset or an enhancement mindset and helps the faculty identify opportunities for them. And again, very, very useful, jointly funded. Without getting too much into the weeds, we jointly funded it for 3 years, and after 3 years, the more research coming in means more IDC, which means the colleges should be able to pay for these positions themselves. Navigating institutional or external financial and compliance mandates. This is something that I think everyone has. I'm not sure why.
They're coming with another one.
Okay. I eat batteries apparently. And this is an example here where the Department of Labor changed the rates that we must pay our staff. This is not something that you're going to be able to plan for necessarily. Sometimes the government tells you what to do. Sometimes the state tells you what to do. Sometimes, if you're a university system like we are, system tells you what to do. So this is where I was talking about building those neat bridges before you need them. In this case, we work closely with human resources to say, okay, the rates of our lab staff are going to change. How is this going to affect us? So we were reactive where we needed to be because we were told we had to do something. There was a mandate that we were obligated to complete. However, then if, in this case specifically, rather than telling the PIs, good luck, you're on your own, go find the budget for you, we sat down with them for the ones that did not have money in their budget or perhaps maybe needed some help renegotiating their budget. And we actually sat down with them individually over a course of months and said, okay, if we do some budget renegotiation, we can make sure that this works for you without anything necessarily negatively adversely affecting your science. And where it didn't work, we had other things in play as well, where there was perhaps a centralized pot of money to help cover that first year of difference. This is just an example, but I do think it's important that everything you plan for is great, but there are going to be things that you didn't plan for, and that's why you need to build those bridges. Now you want here. Okay, I'm going to go quickly, and then we can answer questions with Mike. Software. So large institutions have software packages. That's it. They buy them off the shelf, and they customize them. Smaller institutions like UTRGV, we did not have the ability to buy the giant packages like Cayuse like Huron and some of the other ones. There we go. Thanks, sir. Appreciate it. So smaller colleges or perhaps colleges that are just interested in supporting research that don't have a team of developers, we utilized DocuSign and we utilized Adobe tied with our processes for the first couple of years. And that really worked for us. But then in the last year, we've now launched something called Argo, which is our automated research and grants organizer. And we utilize, because we have the ability to build our own software, we're able to make it meet the expectations and needs of UTRGV. So very quickly, we broke the concept of filling out an application, which can be daunting for new investigators or investigators who may not have history in applications before. We broke it down into a series of logical pages so that they can answer the questions, and they can answer some of the questions, save it, leave it, and come back. They can have delegates on their staff that can work with them to help them fill it out, and this is great for UTRGV, but I think that it's not necessary. You can certainly do all of this in Adobe and DocuSign, which is where we started. And because we started with those systems ahead of time, when we went to build this system, it took us much less time because we already had processes in place, we already had forms and questions in place. And so we were able to build something that really worked for us. One of the things that I think was important, because this is for us, this is not off the shelf, we were able to put in things that matter for us. We wanted to teach our faculty and researchers that they were doing a research project, if they were doing a research project, not service or education. And one of the things in the state of Texas specifically is we must justify that all of our funded research is research if we want to count it towards research. And so we have put in these little guide stones for our researchers
that help us meet those expectations that would not be in a off-the-shelf software purchase. Like, we actually count the word at the time they say research. If we have an investigator who comes to us and say, hey, I'm doing a research project, we can go to you and say, you didn't use the word research anywhere in your entire project. You didn't say it was a research project, you didn't say you were doing research. And so a layperson or a reviewer might read this and think it's a service project or an educational project. Help us help you, and actually we put that in there. So again, these are things that you can do at your school to meet your individual needs. Getting into the details, this is an example of the hard stop questions. I talked a little bit about that, but this is how we phrase them. And so when they answered yes, because it is, and forgive me, because it is yes, if they answered yes to something, then we give them a block of text that tells them a little bit about it. Remember, my goal here is to teach people as they move along, and I don't necessarily want to bog people down with things that they don't need to know. So by using conditional logic in these questions, I'm able to help teach people where they need to and get out of their way when I don't. And we can add questions to this pretty much on the fly. So if there's a new mandate for data security or something like that, we can add a new question in about 2 weeks if we really need to. Operations and integrity. This is human subjects. When we're building these bridges, so when the faculty members yes that they plan on human subjects or yes they plan on animal subjects, rather than hoping that the investigator will reach out to our compliance committees, our system does it for us. So they say yes, they tell us their idea, and then the IACA committee or IBC committee or the IRB get a notification and a direct link to it so that they can go look and have that conversation. Now all of this is a soft stop. I don't want people to submit to IACA or IRB or high performance computing at submission. I just want it on the radar in case a award comes that they can get everything moving and it doesn't take 6 weeks to get an IRB approval. Dashboards, again, I said measure what matters, and so we, Dr. Seigen will probably use the term that we are the most data-rich university in the country, and I would agree with that. Smaller schools don't necessarily have the ability to build dashboards, and bigger schools don't necessarily need them. So we have the ability, we're kind of in that sweet spot right now where we are paying very close attention to our research, and you can see exactly what we're doing and our growth over time, and we go exactly to it. Okay, ensuring timely expenditure of funds. This is important for us, and I'm sure it's important for all of you as well. So a couple of years ago when I got here, we had faculty members who were receiving awards, never spending on it, and then asking for multiple no-cost extensions. So we implemented a process all systematically that on the 15th of every single month, every single faculty member gets a report of their expenditures, of their real dollars and total and percentages, and we actually have them tell us what their processes are. You can't see here very well, but you can see sometimes they're in the red, sometimes they're in the green, and we're helping them raise awareness of these things. Sometimes it's just that you're very busy and you don't realize that you haven't expended anything, or as Constantine will tell you, sometimes it's just that all the work is going to be done in the summer, leave me alone until the summer, but that's okay, at least we know. And so we're helping people, again, sometimes just raising awareness for these issues is a great way to ensure that everyone is all rowing in the same direction.
And again, that system gives you a burn rate, right?
Yes.
So the burn rate might not be, so for example, during the year, right? We give for our students, we buy equipment, but most of the salary, that's a big chunk, is in the summer, right? So the burn rate in the summer is totally different than the burn rate during the year. And what that system does, at least, it tells you what's your burn rate, and it just asks you a question. Hey, you have 50% of your budget remaining. What's your plan? And if you say, don't worry, I am aware, and in the summer I'm gonna expend this much, that's all they need to know, so that they're aware that you are aware of this, and not just, hey, you have this money. And the whole point is we don't want you to plan for no cost extensions, right? It's not a savings account, you need to spend the money, right? And so that's kind of like, it helps put you on alert that this is your burn rate, this is how much money you need to crank it up, or hey, you're overspending, stop.
And I am a huge proponent of NAGware where it's appropriate. It's not appropriate in this case. And so if we have an investigator tell us that they're fine, then we have a flag in our system that says don't bother them for 3 months. And I think that's important for quality of life for our investigators. And that way, if you tell us that you're gonna come back in the summer, then we're probably gonna try to leave you alone until the summer. So, very useful tool. Again, a lot of this was, if you have an ERP system where you're tracking your expenditures, and you've got a system that helps you understand your milestones for any given award, a lot of this is not terribly expensive. It's just a matter of pulling all that data down. We did this originally in Excel for a year and a half before we were able to build this in the system. And so again, this is a great tool. Didn't really cost us any money. It did cost us a lot of time and thought to get it done. But our number of no-cost extensions has fallen through the floor. And now when there is a no-cost extension, there's usually a very good justification for it as well. We're unable to hire a very specialty person, or there was an issue with something that actually seems to make sense. It wasn't just I didn't spend. So, and then survey. This is where I was talking about. For every piece of work that we do in research administration, be it a pre-award, award setup, account setup, IRB, IACOOK, file for a patent, anything that we do, any of those work products, we then send a survey, and it's a very short survey. Faculty are busy. I'm not going to take up your time asking for 15 questions, but I am going to ask 5 questions to tell you whether or not we did a good job or not. And then I'm going to give you one question at the very end that says, hey, did something go so wrong that you need someone to call you? But we ask about, were the staff professional? I think that's very important. Were we professional in our responses? Did we respond in a timely manner? That's important. Timeliness is important. But it's not the only thing. Our next question is, were the staff actually knowledgeable? If they responded in 10 minutes but gave you the wrong answer, that's not helpful. And so I want to make sure that are they timely and knowledgeable? Was the communication, both verbal and written, very clear through the process? Did we give you steps? Did we tell you what needed to be done? Or did we just point you towards a website and say good luck? Hopefully we didn't do that. And then were the staff effectively answered my questions or resolved unexpected issues? And then did I have an overall positive experience? These are the very base questions that I need to know that we're doing the right thing. And you can see, when I got here, we were in the 60s and 50s and 50s and 60s, and we were just about middle. In the last couple of years, we've really worked to address this. And really, actually, we've also kind of, said, hey, we need you to fill these out for us. And so our number of responses has gone up quite a bit too. But as of last year, we were at 97%, 96%, 95%, 96%, 96%, 96%. That's great news and bad news. Great news because we're doing a good job of making sure that our customers and our partners are happy. Bad news because there's really not much else to go. And so we're working on it. And in fact, the Division of Research for our last fiscal year won the service award winner for the entire university. And I think part of that is just paying attention, listening, and then actually responding. Again, I have an opportunity that if you fill out a survey and you rate us terribly, there's a question at the end that says, do you want me to call you? Sometimes people get upset and they say, look, I just need to defend. I'm going to tell you that it didn't go well. We're going to do better next time. Sometimes you say, look, I need to talk to somebody. So we ask that question, and the number has gone down over the years, but I still get them. And so I address that. So, okay. I didn't go as quickly as I wanted to, but I'm happy to open the floor to any questions and dig into any of these items as deeply as you like. Thank you, everyone.
So we're gonna have the moderators. You guys can moderate. Do you want me to put in your questions?
Yeah, we have about 14 questions, which we will not have time to answer all of them, guys. I can tell you for a fact. So I have actually asked one of my colleagues to choose maybe 6 or 7 that will enable us to have a discussion. And then the rest, if I may ask you to, after the conference, if you can provide in the WOBA app your answers, that would be great. We then will share all the information with you.
And Tomasz will be here for lunch,
I'm
so
sure.
you can always talk to him if you have any questions.
I wish I had seen the questions beforehand.
It wouldn't be an ambush then,
Oh, I
Tomasz.
see. Fair enough.
No. In all honesty, it seems that you guys have found the answers for many of our questions. But since we have a diversity of institutions and therefore a diversity in the types of support that those institutions get, and hence you guys, then that's why these questions came up. So why don't we try to you want to say something, right? But we start with question 2 at some point.
Okay. So yeah, thanks very much for this great talk. And yeah, just a few minutes I would like to say. So I sometimes feel jealous for Constantine for having Thomas. So, but I feel empathy for every other institution who do not have Thomas. So yeah, this is really, when you don't have Thomas, then you have to become Thomas. So that's what actually most of the faculties are doing. So we are becoming researcher and we are becoming Thomas.
Yeah.
So living this kind of life at the different degree of involvement, actually that kind of impact, what we basically result in this investment which NSF has given us. So first of all, I would like to thank NSF for starting the stage today with that exactly the main point which actually impact our performance. We are really minority serving institution. So for example, I'm coming from UDC, where we are starting to become 4 years to PhD granting institution in just a span of 6 years. So a lot of things are happening, and Thomas, I think, very succinctly and appropriately put all the topics he has paid attention to, which basically all other institutions are struggling at different levels. Again, some are good in some areas, some are. So and it's not really the lecture series, but it's so these are the good end, or like a good side, what the best can be, and you can see the result, how it's coming out. So now we basically want to open the floor for having your input specific to your institution, specific to your experience, which can basically, we can collate and see if whatever kind of question you have, can it be answered by some of the wisdom we have from the experienced institution, or if we can take some of this question to seek NSF input, if something can be amended in FOA, or something can be kind of put along as a kind of grant progress, then what kind of communication we can have intermittently.
And with us.
Yeah, and with us as a group. So this is basically the time to really just go beyond our your technical expertise to this management aspect of the grant, which basically is both pillar, administrative. And so without further ado,
and I think we are going to follow. We're going to follow the format that NSF started in the previous session. So if you have these types of post-its, please write down your answers to these questions, and maybe you can collect them and place them onto this.
So actually, Arthur may not know. So I had tried to put this one there's just 15 pages here. And yeah, it can be really one of the dreadful thing to think about. So you can, as a group, I think we can go question by question, and probably
question by question. That if you can write down your thoughts on the post-it and then put it on to the.
no, actually, so there are just a blank sheet. So I think instead of putting, so you have the blank area. So whatever group discussions are, or whatever the main points come, they can just write down. Yeah, they don't have to just post it. They can write.
Okay.
So this is a. Then we can basically collect that and actually.
We have some of these.
Yeah. So every table have one. So it's not for individual. It's for the group, and then some who has the nice writing, handwriting. I have the terrible one. So, but please choose one who can write in that.
Give them one that from the
And then at the end you can share. Right?
Yeah, we will collect it. So every table, please make sure you have a kind of this document for recording your observations.
Everyone has a question but me.
Oh yeah, I think you have answered already. But this is again the big game of the game.
Oh, there's one. So there's one here, right? Oh wait, did I?
Yeah, I think this is, so we should give Thomas a big hand first before we let him go.
Yeah, I think it's. I think so. But So, question, guys, question? No, and then the rest, we don't have about 40 minutes. So if you could discuss question number 2, which is, do you have enough institutional support for a good mechanism to proactively address needs and therefore prevent from getting forced to spend direct funds for such purposes? So if you can address that, that would be great.
Guys, there is questions that have a check mark. The ones that don't have a check mark, just skip those. Just the ones that have check mark. Discuss it and then put your input on there. Okay?
Yeah.
Have one representative write. One with good handwriting.
Yeah, I guess.
No, but it's good for you to be here.
So question number 2.
Because eventually this is going to be your computer, and I'm at the point now where it starts to be my concern.
I could always answer more.
I would like to read here.
Yeah.
My card.
Yeah, question number 2.
So guys, please pay attention to the screen. So right now we are discussing question number 2 only, in the interest of time.
Say things like, share an email from the city. And they said, no, we want to send this. In fact, I just had this homework, and I just sent but
Question number 2.
It never says specifically you can take the money and put it into this
Board off working so bad many times in the past. It's like trying to get off
That's your like, so Pat is basically a one-person office right now. So they fill her position, she gets the next position, and then fill her position, right? She lives in office.
Yeah, real work off is great.
Poster board has been very busy.
Yeah, so actually, and I'm okay.
They've just gotten some really bad. I've spent hundreds of hours fixing these.
Yeah. I have Tommy, actually Tommy's switching off one of my grades now. She's good, but very like nitpicky about things. But I think that was better than the Wally days playing.
Sylvia, I have not had a good person since I left Julie back in 2011. And I've had a series of really bad Sorry, I don't read the science. So I have to fully study this one.
And whenever you do this thing, when you sign one of the officers that does
You suck and you
and stuck with that.
you're not getting any help.
Once you I'm having a rapid to a new person.
I cannot think of all the things because my favorite meeting is how do you try to, when you're interviewing how do you say, maybe that person doesn't feel, maybe I can hire this person, so maybe I'm afraid this will happen something the same in work, previous experiences. How do you try to filter that? But they give it
Well, they signed
that's my contribution.
Gives money to run these things, so with that means probably their administrative support, so it would be
I think of collecting the votes which you have and then
so it won't that was like CREST, HBCU-RISE. That one I think was a lot of work taking its place. I'm a little hurt. It's a bad thing.
You get to have a chance to listen to them more.
One of my went to before.
Like, that would be very not one of the things.
Hey guys, 2 more seconds.
We will ask you to please, someone wants to share some of the thoughts that you guys came up with? What about you? Go ahead. Okay, guys. Let's hear Maria sharing.
So the 3 different institutions that our experience from coming from 3 different institutions is that there really are no mechanisms in place to fund things such as equipment repair and maintenance. Unless somebody was clever enough to put it in the grant proposal and then it goes out of there. Furthermore, using indirect costs is a real challenge. It's very restricted. So whenever we want to pay for something that would come from indirect costs, we cannot do it. I mean, we unless we get strictly explicit approval from NSF, and even then, the indirect costs, right?
Yeah.
Or the direct costs that we do not pay indirect.
Just making the modification is difficult.
So this is not an easy.
Not an easy fix. Who else wants to share? Oh, you want to share? Well, keep. Go ahead, please.
Well, yes, of course, we don't have like an established process, but we have to be innovative. For example, we had, I was just explaining, we had a new project, RISE, 2 months ago started, and we established an internal advisory board that had the deans of 3 colleges, provost, and VP for research, and we are organizing an annual workshop, but certain parts of the workshops are covered by NSF, but certain parts are not. So we just ask each dean to host that annual event every year and cover the cost from the college, and they were more than happy. And then we asked the VP for research, can we do the venue arrangement by your office, and they were more than happy. So we have to be innovative.
That's great. One more? Someone else wants to share their thoughts? Or should we?
Can I add a small
Go ahead.
thing? Like,
Yeah.
when we have a problem with covering maintenance costs in the lab, and the pushback we got, or the suggestion we got from our university is, well, you need to set up a service center. So now you're charging people to use, but
Right.
you can't do that for every little piece of equipment.
Right.
So it's very frustrating.
Right. Right.
Exactly.
Exactly. Well, thank you guys. Let's maybe go to number 4 now. If you go to question number 4, this is a question regarding administrative challenges. So at your institution, which administrative process or processes has or have the most significant negative impact on your CREST Center's performance? And if you can share a few examples, that would be great. We'll have about 5 minutes, please.
Yeah, you don't have to mention any university or personal names. Basically, we need some example, like what kind of things are impacted.
Okay.
Wait, so when's that now? When's that? The last time I read something, I was like, can you manage one class? Because I was the threshold of replacement or whatever, convention, and I got like a week this year. Because the budget is so bad. Oh, but I got the commitment this summer, so I might be one of the last ones to get it. But that's ridiculous. Like, at a certain point, I'm just gonna be like, screw it, I'm gonna teach my 4 classes, do nothing else, and just stop contributing beyond my teaching hours that you're making it. It is a lot, but if you teach the same class over and over again, then I will go and I will lose my full craft status to slide into that inevitable 20-year decline to emeritus status. Because if they're not going to give me resources I need to create a more fully realized plan of action for how to help students, why should I? $7 million can go we don't know this much It also depends on the NSF program, because some are more scholarship focused and they have a cap on how much
That's what they're Yeah, I mean, the 1976 document says WTUs is the standard. For some reason, our campuses decided the 1976 document. Of course, the 1976 document also says 60 switches was already available. Seminars should never be more than 20, things like that.
And you know what I mean? I mean, I think they need to think maybe at a state level how these things work. What is the role of the community college versus what is the role of CSU? And more of our students come in with transfers, maybe more take GE and stuff like that. And what would it provide? And I think that's absolutely fine that way. Someone that they probably pay millions of dollars to consult for. I don't know.
No, I mean, the Board of Trustees is our decision-making board, but the legislature has a...
Okay, guys, please, 2 more minutes to wrap up this.
Yeah, we're like shit on it with the other educational entities in California. I didn't put it that way, but that's like now. Still a lot of hot tea. And so I honestly in the last few months have been looking at every college stuff, the amount they pay. If I'm making $186K, I will never get
I'm always
keep in mind, I keep my eyes open to see if there's full time.
when you actually don't
I mean, you take this is where the million classes, but those million classes.
That's what I was going to say. I
I mean, I probably don't because I'm lazy. I'm sometimes like at the end I just like
that's my job. That's the reason why I'm stuck in out. You know, hardly anyone like is still here.
But the CSU system is definitely underfunded and undercompensated for the amount of work we have.
This is the second, probably the most negative
And I think it doesn't help that our president is awful.
I mean, you all heard about the topic, right?
Oh my God. Okay.
60 more seconds, please.
So, we have just been an open forum out there.
We have 60 more seconds to wrap up.
And it was a student who asked us, very, very nice. He basically, no. That was
We are the second institution to give him a vote of no confidence in 2020, and I think he is just... No, because he got rid of all the checks and balances by signing, over his time here, firing anyone that is not like his current. So, yeah, I also...
She was pretty much the last one. She suffered a lot.
He's also petty and he has...
Okay, guys, thanks very much for participating in the discussion. So,
We are going to request if your representative thought from a particular table, actually, if some of you can just share, like, what as a group you, like, what came out of this discussion. Yeah, so, yeah.
Do you want to share something?
No, one thing, I think we were commenting that, you know, the kinds of things that are being done here are fantastic.
Thomas, right.
That Thomas is
Yeah.
doing. But it's not easy to do in some universities where, like uni, where you have, or I don't know, different universities that have, the University of Puerto Rico, you know, that
Right.
have these big kind of bureaucratic centers that take care of these things. So anyway, that's
One of the big benefits of UTRGV is we're only 9 years old, and so we don't have a culture of we've always done it that way. And that's something that we didn't have to overcome because we're only, like I said, we're only 9 years old. We might have 2 legacy schools, but we're only 9 years old, so there's never been that culture of we've always done it that way, and we're not going to change. No, and we get all the way from the top of the leadership. We have people saying, "Well, we've never done it before, so give me your best shot, and it'll be okay if we don't get it exactly right the first time." And that's been freeing from an administrative standpoint.
And the line of communications have been tremendous. And again, I cannot emphasize, ever since Thomas and Jan came, when we, like, I've often had issues with processes. I would go to Thomas and say, I don't like this process. This is just too tedious, right? He's never gonna tell me, well, too bad, suck it up, you know? No, he'll say, okay, let's just sit down and let's just see how we can improve it, and they'll bring it to the other ADRs. And if all of us feel that, yeah, that can be improved, they're gonna go and make changes. And so, now, not everything, right? Sometimes it says, like, my hands are tied, and unfortunately, this is something, you know, but it's different when somebody tells you that I'm trying, I wanna help you, and I will help you in these things, but some things I can't. It's different when somebody tells you, I'm sorry, no, it's always been like this, get used to it. So that is refreshing. And again, we didn't have that. We didn't always have that. It's a totally shifting culture. And so, but lucky for us, we don't have we've always done it this way. That's not an issue.
Not for us.
And actually, I think Thomas has the answer to the two concerns from the previous.
I'm not going to say answers, but I will say I have processes in place. So one of the things that we've done at UTRGV is we've been very generous with our IDC that we give back to the colleges and the investigators directly. We changed our IDC policy, and I think John will talk about that. And then we have some very clear guidance on what it can be spent on, and that guidance is generally pretty open, so that you can go ahead and buy those supplies needed for the equipment. I agree, don't turn every single thing into a piece of core equipment. That's not going to help anybody. But one of the things, and I didn't mention it here because we're working on it currently, is identifying the key core equipment that is necessary, and we're going to put those at least in a core. And then we are going to allocate funds centrally to support that area. It must have centrally allocated funds at some point to be able to support those. So I agree with everything you're saying. And I didn't address it because we're in the process of changing it at the moment. That's not a success story yet. It's FY25 and 26. Go ahead.
Just gonna ask you,
Yeah.
how much do you return to your investigators?
Okay.
No. So the direct return to investigators is 7%. With 30% going to the colleges, with allowing the dean to have the discretion to do what they want.
But the other thing is we have had organized research units.
Yes.
So they have developed organized research units. There's only about now 18 or 20, 19. And so the organized research unit, if somebody puts a grant through your organized research unit, that unit gets 7%. Additional.
Yeah.
The co-PIs get 7%, and then the dean gets 7%, and the department gets 7%. So in reality, you can always negotiate and say, and only 2% goes to the provost. So this is the thing what we said in the university, well, at least in our college, this is what we said. Put your proposal through an organized research unit. I don't care if it's mine. In the college, we have 4. Put it through one, because that 7% stays at the college and can help you. If it goes to the provost, you're gonna have to beg for it, and you might not get it. But it has helped us a lot because, let me tell you, my 7% was 60,000. That can help me do a lot of things. It can actually help me hire another staff. So that is something, and by the way, it wasn't like that before. We were barely getting 5% of 5% of something.
It wasn't transparent, right?
Wasn't,
And that was
exactly.
the problem. And so we instituted a very transparent model that's based off expenditures. There is no negotiation, there are no handshakes. It's based off of the numbers in the general ledger, and in October, the fiscal year closes on August 31st, and in October, that money is put into the accounts. There's no discussion, it's just there. And then we do everything in our power to make sure that the expenditures, we don't stand in your way if you need to use IDC to support your research. So it's working, and we're going to revisit it every 3 years because those numbers might change as we get closer towards our line.
Can I ask, how is your office funded?
My office is funded through state funding and IDC. It's a mixture. Yeah. And then I want to address so your topic. We had a program, and we're in the middle of revamping it so it doesn't exist at the moment. We called it Keys to Research, and it was similar to what you're talking about. 9 months, during the 9-month appointment, we had a session every, I think it was the second Friday every month, and we brought in program directors from different agencies, we brought in successful faculty members, we brought in research administrators, we brought in compliance people, and it was originally designed for new researchers, but eventually we decided to open it up to everybody. And so that's why we kind of having to revamp it. But we cover a topic every month, and we deep dive into that topic with experts and discussions. And so sometimes it's NSF, sometimes it's NIH, sometimes it's export controls, sometimes we bring in Homeland Security, and this is something that we do to kind of offset it, and provided through our Research Enhancement Office, and it meets that need that you were talking about for ongoing development of faculty, and the central group is paying for it, not necessarily in asking for other groups to handle it too. And we're in the process of revamping that. So 2 things that aren't success stories yet, but certainly on the radar. And actually, it's part of the bonus slides I didn't get to.
So I wanted just to ask, and maybe we can kind of wrap up this session. Is how did you manage to get the backing from the provost and the president? That is, I mean, in my view, that is key, because if they are not on board, then whatever you do is.
Well, you don't work in a vacuum and don't toil in the dark. We have lines of communication to the Office of the President, Chief of Staff, Chief Legal, Chief Compliance. This is what I was talking about, build those bridges. They know exactly what we're doing, and we're very careful with our asks. We do not come and ask for everything once a month or even once a year. We do our very best to make sure that when we ask for things, they're very clearly strategic towards R1 or towards Emerging Research University. And we tell them what we're doing without asking for money too, so that they're aware of it. They can talk about it. They can be proud of the work that research is doing when they're talking. Right? If the provost gets up and talks about the excellent degrees that they have and this pathway for our students into research, then that helps them with their message as well. So we're talking to them in their language, and that helps. And I will also note that our Senior Vice President of Research is an engineer and has excellent mindset for being able to address that. And then Dr. Bailey, our president, at one point was a VPR. So it wasn't that hard of a conversation to help them understand the language that we're using in the Division of Research. But it's communication. It's a constant communication to make sure that we are all aligned towards this goal of where we're going. And it's.
But Tomasz, I know you're not political, and I know. But I'm gonna give it in a different way, and I'll tell you what the change is. And again, I'm not calling anyone. I'm just gonna tell you the difference. The real difference happened when we got the switch. So the VPR in the past used to report to the provost. So it was a position under the provost office. When Thomas and Jan came, it got split and it became under the president. So now that really was a big change and shift, because now you don't need to go through the provost office to get to the VPR. The VPR is a different avenue that reports directly to the president, and then the provost is for the academic side, but not necessarily taking the brunt of research, and then the research office deals. That, in my opinion, that was the big thing, because when it was under the provost, and again, no disrespect to our provost, he's just new, but when the position was under the provost, there was a lot more constraints. Now that it became separate, it became better for everyone, because you have a different line of your communication, and research and academic, basically faculty relations and tenure is not, they're related, but they're different. They report both to the president.
I think the key there is that now you made research as important as the other.
At a very foundational level,
yes,
the word research was added to the mission of the university.
Yes, exactly.
That was very, very important.
Yeah, I mean that key. Yeah, thank you.
So I have a question. This might be since we have
NSF here as well. So typically faculty salaries in minority institutions are lower than major institutions, right? So, and that's a barrier for research sometimes. And indirect cost, 7%, 10% helps to motivate the faculty. But are there any other solutions? I'm thinking like, as an example, also it may help minority institutions attract more research focused faculty. Is there any way to supplement base salary of a faculty who attracts a lot of grants? What is the motivation to do more research for productive faculty?
Oh yeah, that was our question one.
We're running out of time, but I will note that we do have an incentive program for our faculty. It is not in addition to base salary, because it's very difficult to say, okay, your base salary is now 5% higher when the grant at some point in the future and your base salary is now associated with a grant that is no longer active. So we do have an incentive program that at award you get a one-time incentive to get that award. And I won't go into the details here, but we give a one-time incentive that can either be directly to your base salary and then you have to follow all the taxes, or we'll give it to you as an IDC payment to you and you can use it to spend on your lab if you so choose. But you're absolutely right. These incentives are important, especially for people who have not or are interested in dipping their toe. But then what's the point? Why should I do it if there's no incentive for me? Why? So we do have that program as well.
Yeah, so thanks again everyone for participating in this important session, and as you can see we had a very ambitious plan, but this is a kind of work in progress, so we will continue our discussion in the follow-up meeting. And for your information, this survey is also loaded on mobile app. So you are requested to take time, just give your input so that it can be recorded and whenever you get time for this meeting. So we will appreciate that part, and again, thank you very much.
Thank you guys.
Enjoy your lunch.
So I'm going to